If you are researching the reality of living in London, from the quiet village vibes of Hamstead to the polished streets of South Kensington, you found the right blueprint. This 4K guide is a deep dive into the neighborhoods and lifestyles of one of the world's most enduring cities. London. When a man is tired of London, he is tired of life. For there is in London all that life can afford. Samuel Johnson. London runs wide rather than tall. It is a patchwork city of old riverbank, former villages, and incorporated towns joined into a single urban field. Centuries of trade and migration turned this one capital into many overlapping worlds, each with its own pace, priorities, and habits. Power, finance, arts, and everyday life all operate side by side here, sometimes in the same square mile. The name London dates back to Londinium, a Roman settlement on the Thames established in the 1st century Common Era. While the settlement was Roman, even earlier Celtic roots are likely in the word's origin. Since its ancient origin, the city has grown outward in waves. Medieval lanes, Georgian terraces, Victorian infrastructure, post-war rebuilds, and glass towers all folding into one another. Parks and riverside paths cut through the density, giving the metropolis room to breathe and people room to move. Daily life in London feels less like crushing into a single city center and more like traversing the routes people trace around it. Commutes, market days, late trains home. Travel here means learning those lines, then bending them to the will of your own curiosity. Stay with us until the end for the literal and symbolic heart of the English-speaking world. This isn't just an architectural marvel. It is a global epicenter of legislative power and institutional stability. So relax, give London a little time and attention, and allow it to change how you see cities, history, and your own place in both. Dearest viewer, you are cordially invited to London. Camden Town. Camden Town is technically a district of North London, but it behaves more like the city's mischievous side project. Built up from fields beside the canal and railway, it grew into a dense knot of streets where experiments in music, fashion, and food all ended up sharing the same patch of ground. The name comes from the 18th century Earl Camden, whose estate development set the pattern for the grid and terraces that still shape the area. What began as a respectable residential neighborhood shifted gears once industry, freight lines, and markets moved in. Stalls multiplied, nightlife moved close to the water, and a reputation for alternative culture stuck hard enough that locals still talk about going to Camden as if it were a small city inside the bigger one. This is part everyday London, part open-air playground. Spend a morning, an afternoon, or a whole day, find a lock, leave a lock, and fall in love with Camden Town. Hamstead and Hamstead Heath. Hamstead and Hamstead Heath are London testing what happens when a suburb and a wild green ridge share the same postcode. Hamstead keeps the feel of an old village that grew up, kept its name, from the Old English Hamstead for homestead or farm. And then all the adorable bookshops, cafes, and steep lanes it could without losing that village soul. The Heath plays a different role altogether. Commons, ponds, scrub, and woodland laid across high ground that escaped full development and now cuts a rough edge into North London. Paths cross old field boundaries, skim former estates, and connect viewpoints that once helped people watch for approaching trouble and now help them check the weather over half the city in a single glance. It is officially an urban park, yes, but also Europe's first designated urban quiet park, a rare patch where the hum drops enough for wind and distant bells to win. Spend an afternoon here, or a whole day, and Hamstead and the Heath give you village streets, long views, and big green fields. It is a good place to walk, think, swim when the ponds are open, and forget you are still in a huge city. Shoreditch. Shoreditch, where old lanes and new ideas live harmoniously. This part of East London grew from fields and workshops into a dense patch of trendy boutiques, historic markets, and small theaters, all of which feel like living art spaces and the perfect place for late-night adventures. Shoreditch is a neighborhood in the London borough of Hackney, officially, but in conversation, it's used more like a nickname for a mindset. Casual, creative, even slightly chaotic in the best way. Street corners double as galleries, former industrial spaces keep finding second and third lives, and side streets turn into long-running conversations about design, music, food, and how cities should feel. Shoreditch is an exciting part of East London, packed with street art, bars, and new restaurants. Come here to eat, drink, browse, and stay out late without going far between stops. Greenwich and Greenwich Park. Greenwich and Greenwich Park feel like stepping into a Jane Austen novel. The name goes back to Old English forms meaning green harbor or green settlement, and that mix of water, slope, and open ground still defines how the area feels on a map. The town below took shape as a royal enclave, then a district threaded with streets that link the riverfront to the park's upper edge. Over time, it became part of Greater London and a royal borough in its own right. Yet it still carries that slightly separate identity, close in, but with its own center of gravity. A pleasantly grand place, equal parts Baroque, Georgian, and Victorian. Greenwich Park stretches across the hill behind it, one of the city's royal parks, and also a carefully managed patch of ancient trees, meadows, and formal avenues. It anchors walking routes, day trips, and family itineraries, turning Greenwich into a place that Londoners recommend when someone asks for a change of scene without leaving the city. Notting Hill. Grown from farmland on London's western edge, Notting Hill is a fashionable, upscale area in West London, known for its rows of colorful Victorian homes and leafy streets. It is a fabulous borough recognized for trendy restaurants and a surprising annual Caribbean carnival. Notting Hill combines a Bohemian history with a polished, wealthy character. With high-end shops sitting alongside a long-standing creative scene. Its atmosphere blends big city energy, period charm, and an easygoing feel, while still preserving a strong sense of local diversity and culture, making it one of London's most scenic and characterful areas. Notting Hill is a lovely neighborhood to walk in, with its pastel houses and Portobello Road Market, always a treat on a busy day. Come here to browse antiques and food stalls, stop for coffee or lunch, and take in some memorable moments. It's a splendid way to spend a day when you want London, but without the rush. Holland Park. London has plenty of grand squares and big-name parks, but Holland Park plays a quieter game. A district and a green space that grew around the same old estate and never quite separated. The name comes from Holland House, a 17th century mansion once called Cope Castle. Streets were carved from the old grounds, crescents, and a public park as West London expanded. Today, Holland Park is both an affluent West London district and the park at its heart. The surrounding area is lined with grand Victorian houses, embassies, and discreetly wealthy streets. While the park itself combines remnants of an old estate, formal gardens, and quieter wooded sections, including a Japanese-style garden and cultural venues. Overall, it feels serene, green, and upmarket, with a village-like atmosphere and a strong sense of history beneath the modern luxury. Holland Park is a delightful respite from busy West London, with formal gardens, the Kyoto Gardens ponds and peacocks, and enough space to switch off for a while. It is a good place to sit, talk, and recharge between bigger stops on your trip. South Kensington. South Kensington developed around a Victorian plan to group science, art, and education institutions in one area. The district expanded after the Great Exhibition of 1851, supported by new rail links that made it easy to reach from the rest of London. Although it shares its name with older Kensington, South Kensington developed a distinct identity shaped by planning rather than gradual growth. Today, you will find tall Victorian terraces, historical landmarks, and a cluster of major museums and institutions sharing the same close streets. Grand townhouses, white stucco fronts, and formal squares give the area a polished, international feel. South Kensington works well as a comfortable base in London, with major museums close by, plenty of places to eat, and excellent tube connections that make it easy to get around and return to quieter streets at night. Covent Garden. Covent Garden is a lively area in London's West End, famous for its pedestrian piazza, former produce market, upscale shops, and street performers. Close to the Royal Opera House and Drury Lane, it's a major spot for theatre, dining, and culture, with landmarks such as the London Transport Museum and the Seven Dials nearby. Originally named for an abbey's old garden plot, Covent Garden has evolved into a mostly pedestrian area known for its covered market, elegant neoclassical design, and energetic street performers. The district blends the 19th century apple market with upscale boutiques and cobbled lanes just steps from the West End. Many travelers end up building their days in London around Covent Garden. There are a number of lovely shops, cafes, and street performers, with plenty packed into its market halls and surrounding streets. You may end up here more than once on a short trip. Soho. Soho began as open land used for hunting and, over centuries, turned into a city district people now associate with nightlife and going out. Even the name Soho comes from an old hunting cry used in the area. Now, "Let's go to Soho" is almost the same as saying, "Let's go out for the evening." Soho is often described as having shifted from 17th century workshops and small factories to one of the city's best-known cultural districts. Cobbled lanes and cast-iron frontages still show the earlier fabric, while today, the same streets hold a dense mix of designer shops, varied places to eat, galleries, and night spots. The result is a compact neighborhood that feels both style-conscious and layered with a past that comes from long-term creative use rather than neat planning. Soho is an easy answer when someone asks, "Where next?" at night in central London. In many minds, it is London's nightlife. Packed with bars, restaurants, clubs, and late-night spots so close together, it often becomes the go-to area for those trying to put off turning in. Kew and Kew Gardens. Kew sprung up around a bend in the Thames River. It is a former riverside hamlet that turned into a suburb as London grew larger and engulfed it. This quiet and charming district is home to an awe-inspiring garden and gorgeous Victorian architecture. Its name likely blends words for quay or landing and hoe, which is a spur of land. A fitting name for a place built around a green, a landing point along such a busy and iconic river. Kew today is now synonymous with two things. There is the village itself, with houses, schools, and local streets wrapped around Kew Green and the river. Then there is Kew Gardens, the Royal Botanic Gardens that expanded from royal estates into a mapped-out landscape of glass, lawns, and experimental planting. The gardens became a global reference point for plant science while still functioning as a day-trip destination for Londoners who treat it as their oversized local park. This is a place of calm, reflection, and relaxation. A spot on your trip to take a full-day stop for the beautiful Kew Gardens and its big greenhouses, long paths, and quiet corners by the river. It is a good place to walk, see plants from around the world, and slow down before the train ride back into central London. Richmond and Richmond Park. Richmond, on London's southwest edge, is an affluent town in London's southwest, known for beautiful buildings, a lovely townscape, and relaxing, verdant spaces. It is filled with boutique shops and decidedly British pubs that line its quaint village streets. Behind the town rises Richmond Park, a former royal hunting ground, now the largest of the English capital's royal parks, a vast, enclosed plateau of grass, woods, and rolling paths. Trails cut between old plantations and open ground, with numerous loops for walking or cycling. The relationship between town and park is so tight that many guides write about them as a single entity rather than two separate places. Trains and buses cross the river and climb the hill to Richmond, which is home to a number of inns and hotels. This makes Richmond not only a wonderful destination, but also a practical and leisurely launch point for anyone seeking to visit London and yearning for a greener, quieter stay. Breathe in the fresh air and enjoy the stunning natural beauty of these lush, green, open spaces. Or watch for the local deer and spend an afternoon by the river in Richmond and Richmond Park. A simple and very good place to relax. Westminster. Westminster is the part of London where all the postcard shots and frames from the movies come from. The name goes back to the Westminster, the monastery that grew beside the river opposite the old city, and gave this patch of ground its long association with national power and ceremony. Around that core, streets of offices, apartment blocks, and formal squares fold together into the city of Westminster, a grand central borough of monumental buildings in the Gothic Revival, Baroque, and Edwardian architectural styles. Rail lines, underground routes, and bridges provide access to this point from anywhere in London. It is the very center of, and the very heart of the capital. At its center, Elizabeth Tower and the long facade of the Houses of Parliament form the view many people associate with London. The vertical clock face and horizontal riverfront compress centuries of architecture, culture, and history into a single viewpoint. Together, these are widely regarded as the country's most sought-after sites. Take a lively jaunt and sightsee along the Thames, visit Westminster Abbey, stroll through St. James's Park, and explore all the little side streets therein. Between the landmarks, you can grab a local meal, find a bench with a view, and watch some British boats and double-decker buses go by, right in the middle of the city. London is a city of villages, grown apart and, over time, brought together. With enough exploration, one might fall in love with every one of the boroughs, pubs, lanes, parks, and people who call London home. So much so that it may leave you confident that several different versions of yourself could belong in several different boroughs, all feeling right at home, and each one quietly waiting for your return.